with Lutheran Social Services. If people need help financially, that maybe Mid-Minnesota doesn't have the tools or resources, we refer them to Lutheran Social Services. Mid-Minnesota members can work with them. We refer them all the time. The other thing they do is provide classes like this. So every quarter, we're going to have Shannon come in and do a different class for us. So I'd like to introduce Shannon Doyle with Lutheran Social Services.
Hello, thank you, Jill. Awesome, fantastic. Well, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. It looks like we have 20 people on the call right now, and I have a feeling other people will be joining as we go. Sometimes people are a little behind. But Jill, I just want you to know, oh, I'm gonna turn off, I don't know, the rest of you probably can't hear this, but Jill and I get a doorbell every time somebody enters. So I'm just gonna turn that off because it's really distracting for me. Oh, I can't, here we go, all right. There we go. Okay, so I've got that turned off now. So great. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We are going to talk today about senior fraud prevention. Just a couple things I want to ask everybody. If you please could try to make sure that your computer stays on mute, unless we're at a place where we are stopping for questions. Just because it's really distracting for everybody if we can hear side chatter. And once again, like I said just a couple minutes ago, but there are people who just came on. If you want to engage in our interactive tool today, we are using a tool called Mentimeter. It's private, secure, and confidential, and it keeps all your answers and questions anonymous. And if you want to use it, you will need to open a new browser window. Either on your computer or pull out your cell phone and go to menti.com and enter the code 3352551. And that code is at the top of the screen right now, and it will be for the next couple pages. All right. Okay, well, let's dive in because, you know, we hear about scams and frauds and identity theft all the time. And, you know, I wish that I could say to you that after attending this workshop that you will be 100% safe and protected from all of this stuff. But unfortunately, we're never 100% safe, right? And I'm not saying that to scare people, but it's just, so what we're going to talk about today is the idea that, you know, when we leave our house, we make sure the doors are shut, we make sure the door or the windows are shut, the doors are locked. Maybe we have a alarm system or a security system that we set. You know, we see things about webcams and motion lights and sensors, and all of those things are preventative, but they're not necessarily going to 100% stop somebody from breaking into our house if they are very determined to. But they are deterrents, and they help to deter people from doing that, and so it reduces the likelihood that we would experience, you know, a personal theft. Now, so what we're going to talk about today is the same idea that we can put up barriers and we can put up deterrents to make sure that we are not, that we are less likely to be victims of scam or fraud or identity theft. It's really interesting when we look at research, people who are 50 and older hold about 83% of the wealth in America, and households headed by people in their 70s and 80s tend to have the highest median net worth. So of course that makes all of us prime targets for financial scams, and the effects can really be devastating. You know, with population that is aging and, you know, growing all the time, this really becomes a justice issue. It's also, of course, a personal finance issue and a public policy issue. But I'll tell you that it's kind of hard to pin down the numbers about scam and fraud and just like how much money is lost, because there there are estimates out there that as few as 1 in 44 cases of scams and frauds and identity theft are ever reported. But studies have calculated that older people lose anywhere from $2.9 billion to $36 billion each year through different types of financial exploitation. So it's a pretty big number. So today we are going to talk about ways to, or what types of different scams and fraud and identity theft are out there, how to recognize it, and how to prevent uh, yourself from becoming a victim, and then what to do if you do become a victim. So I just want to start off here with a little quiz. And if you're not on Menti, feel free to put your answer in the chat function. But if you want to use Menti, again, you just go to the website, menti.com, and enter the code that's at the top of the screen. And just think about, where do you fall on this scale? Is it somewhere, or which one of these statements sound most like you, I guess is what we're looking for here. I fear I will fall for a scam and lose a lot of money. I worry most about my personal information being stolen. I feel like scams and identity theft are everywhere, so I try to avoid it. Or I don't worry about scams or identity theft at all. And people can fall on all different levels of this scale. And sometimes, you know, it might depend on the day. So I'll just give people a couple more minutes here to enter their answer. We don't want to spend too much time on these because we have a lot of information to get through. But yeah, so it looks like the biggest concern so far out of the people that have entered votes is that they worry most about their personal information being stolen, and I can definitely see why, because that is a big concern, and I think it's a concern because it's one of those things that we feel like we have a lot less control over. Whereas most of us feel like we could identify a scam or a fraud in process. But you still have to arm yourself with information about scams and frauds. So what I'm going to start with here right now today is just talking about the different types of scams that are out there. So these are the major categories of scams, okay? And inside of that, there are different examples of what that might look like. So an opportunity scam is simply where a scammer calls you up promising exciting rewards. This could be, you know, getting out of debt easily. It could be a lottery scam or sweepstakes scam, maybe a new investment, a new job. Or sometimes, these are the ones I hate the most, but the romance scams, the sweetheart scams. And then we have scams that are based on a threat or fear, you know, where scammers threaten the target with negative outcomes, something like arrest or identity theft, financial loss, if you don't pay money. Examples of these would be government imposter scams, like the IRS or Social Security calling you up. It could be a tech support scam. You know, somebody calls you and says, "Oh," or even a picture flashes up on your computer and says, "Oh, you've been infected by a virus," and they offer to help you get rid of it if you pay them some money. And then of course there's the grandparent scam, where somebody calls you up in the middle of the night pretending to be, you know, your grandchild, and either says they need money wired to them right away because they're in jail, or maybe they had an accident and they're at the hospital, they have to pay, something like that. And then finally, we have just consumer purchase scams. And that's just really where you buy something on the internet, it never shows up, or you know, basically that's what it is. There's also, though, this was heartbreaking to me when I found out about this, pet adoption scams. And my younger brother, who lives out in Idaho, almost fell for one of these. You know, it's during this, during the lockdown, during the pandemic, a lot of people are, you know, looking at getting pets. And there are false advertisements, false websites for adopting pets out there. And of course, you know, you send the money to them ahead of time, and then they say, you know, oh, well, we're going to ship your pet to you, and the pet never shows up. And and there's other smaller types of scams too. There's purchase scams like home repair frauds, rental scams, you know, where those would be mostly on Craigslist or the internet. But it's really easy on the internet for people to advertise items that they have for sale that they don't really even have. So we're going to talk about ways to identify these and avoid them in the future. But before we do that, I just want to talk quickly about the different, we all have these mental frames that are more likely to fall for different types of scams. There's an asterisk here by consumer purchase scams, because consumer purchase scams typically don't have a mental frame. Anybody could fall for them. Although even I did this summer. I was shopping online, and there was a really cool item. It was like a reusable tissue holder that I thought, you know, oh, it's got, you know, like cloth tissues that you can reuse, and you pull it out. No, it's good for the environment, and you know, people won't have to use so many paper Kleenexes. Basically, it's an old idea, right, of the handkerchief. And I ordered it. It actually came. It took a month to come. But when I got it, it was like not what it looked like on the ad that I saw. There were no handkerchiefs included in it, and it was just a flimsy piece of plastic. So it's really easy to fall for these things online. All right, so, but it's important though to understand the different frames of mind that we can have that might lead us to being a victim of certain types of scams or fraud. Compliance is one of those mental frames. People who have this mental frame believe that government is powerful and controlling, that, you know, why resist because it's futile, or, oh, I might get in trouble, or it's wrong to resist, and or if I don't comply, there might be serious consequences, like I might end up going to jail, or, you know, and that's a lot of what those scammers will do is, you know, especially when we're talking about things like the Social Security scam or the IRS, where they call you up and they threaten you with jail time if you don't, you know, pay up your taxes that you supposedly owe. So if you're a person who, you know, and a lot of us were raised that we have to respect authority. If we're getting a call from Social Security or the IRS, it must be, you know, important, and we better listen to what they're saying. So compliance is the first mind frame. All right, then the other mental frame that we have here is intelligence, right? People in this mental frame, they believe that intelligence is signaled by being confident and seeming like you have all the answers or are completely knowledgeable on a topic. Or, you know, they appear intelligent because it's important for social status. Well, people in this frame, they tend to fall for investment scams, or get rich quick scams, or, you know, because they tend to think, oh, well, this is information that other people don't have. And, you know, maybe they're the people who are going to invest in cryptocurrency, or, you know, some new thing that you know, oh, I'm getting in on the ground level. And oftentimes those, not always, but oftentimes those things can be a scam. And then another mental frame that we have here is order. You know, people in this frame, they fall for the just world fallacy, like the idea that, you know, justice always comes to people who do wrong. Karmic or divine justice keeps the world in order. Good deeds are rewarded, you know, bad deeds are punished. And although I think we all like to think that that is the case, it's not always the case. And people in this frame also tend to fall for scams in the opportunity category. And things like lottery scams or sweepstakes, or, hey, I'm a good person, I should win this sweepstake, or why wouldn't I win something like this? And so there's a lot of things that we can tell ourselves, where it makes sense that we would win this. And then the final mental frame is opportunity or entitlement. So people who have this mental frame, they believe that wealth accumulation is a matter of luck as opposed to hard work. That you have to seize the money-making opportunities that are presented to you, and that surprise windfalls truly are possible. So again, people in this frame tend to fall for fake employment scams and investment fraud in the opportunity category. So you can see that the opportunity category of scams tends to be the most common one fallen for. However, there's the threat and fear that people fall for a lot, and then the purchases too. But people with these different mental frames here are going to tend to fall more for opportunity or threat and fear, and then all of us can fall for the consumer purchase scams. So when you think about these definitions, is there one that sticks out to you that sounds like you? You can vote in Menti, or feel free to enter your answer in the chat, or quickly unmute yourself and throw out your answer. Oops, I just noticed that I spelled intelligence wrong, but I bet if I hadn't have said that, maybe you wouldn't have noticed. Okay, it looks like we have about 4 people voting, so that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, and so we've got, let's see, 2 people for opportunity. One says they think they fall into the compliance area, and another person says that they fall into the intelligence. Oh, looks like we have a few more people voting here. Yeah, and it can be hard too. I mean, it can be hard to figure out what category you might fall in, but an interesting thing to think about, definitely. So understanding, so now we talked about, the different types of scams and fraud that are out there. There's the opportunity, there's threat or fear, and then there is consumer purchases. So let's focus more on some specific trends that we've seen in 2020. Who here has heard of the gift card scam? I don't, you don't have to answer, but I'm guessing that people have heard of this. This is actually a true story that happened last year. But this scam is still out there, where this woman was called up from tech support, supposedly at her bank. And this person, the scammer, made up a web page that completely mimicked a snapshot of a checking account from this woman's bank. I don't know how they found out where this woman banked or anything like that, but what they did was they showed this woman what looked like her checking account, and that a bunch of money had been taken out of it, or that it was on hold or frozen or something like that. And then the tech support person who calls her up, says they're from the bank, says, well, I'll tell you what, if you go buy a bunch of credit cards, a bunch of gift cards, sorry, and give me a call back with those serial numbers, or I'll call you back at this time, and I want the serial numbers off of the back of the gift cards. Well, once that thief has the serial number off the back of the gift card, they can use that card. But unfortunately, for the person who hands over that card, there's really no way to trace it or to get their money back. In this con, scammers email the people, outline a scenario, a scenario in which, you know, they need immediate money and ask for payment via a gift card. So this is the biggest clue. If you are ever being asked by anyone, whether it is a purchase scam or an opportunity scam or a threat or fear, if anyone ever asks you to pay with a gift card, that is a big red light that that they are throwing a scam at you. That because no legitimate company is ever going to ask you to pay them with a gift card, right? And that is why gift cards are popular with scammers, because they're just like cash. It's anonymous spending. They don't need the physical card to use it, and they just ask for the gift card number and the pin on the back, and then you know this, then you're out your money. So that's a really common scam. That happens, but also gift cards are a common way that scammers will ask you to pay because they're not traceable. So, so big red light there. Here's another one, the romance or companion scams. These are just, like I said before, to me, they are heartbreaking. And they usually approach people via Facebook, or sometimes it can even make its way to your email. It's really surprising how, you know, they get a hold of your email account. Or others, just other social media sites. But you know, a lot of times they'll say, oh, I know this person who knows you, or I know a person who knows a person who knows you. And then you friend them on Facebook, or you know, friend them in some other way, or respond to their email, and they start up a relationship. Sometimes it could just be like, they could make it sound like a regular telemarketing call, and you know, start up a chat with you, and try to, you know, kind of build a relationship from there. And it's not always romance. Sometimes it's, you know, they're saying, you know, they're more about companionship or friendship. And of course, they target people who are alone, people who are isolated, vulnerable. And then, you know, at one point, once that relationship is built, they ask for money to be wired, or they may ask for gift cards too. So this is what two of the biggest giveaways that you might be, that you're probably dealing with someone who's a scammer or fraud, is if they ask you to send money, they ask you to send money via wire transfer or via gift card. Okay, so and it's just important to be aware of these types of different examples of scams that are going around right now. Here's a fairly common purchase scam. You may have heard of it or may not have, but it's a magazine subscription scam. So what happens is that the victims are called by telemarketers and offered renewals on their magazine subscriptions, and often at a significantly reduced cost. But in reality, the scammers are not calling to renew or reduce the price of existing subscriptions. Instead, they trick their victims into signing up for entirely new magazines, which they didn't want and often couldn't afford. And sometimes the scammers are working, sometimes they work or operate in call centers. Sometimes they'll call you up and they pretend to be canceling your magazine subscriptions, but instead of that, they're signing you up for more. And what they do is they trade these lists, these lead lists that they get from different companies who are selling our information again. And the sad thing is, there was one example where a 78-year-old woman had paid $1,400 a year on magazines annually. And they finally, thank goodness that her son was helping her out. But one of the ways that could have been avoided was to maybe look at a bank statement as well. So that is a very common purchase. So oftentimes what I want you to think about here is that companies, scammers, different groups, they can get a hold of these lists of people that maybe subscribe to a certain magazine at a time, or maybe, live in a certain area or fall within a certain age group. All these lists are available for purchase, and then they can get enough information about you to convince you that they're legitimate. And they're not always doing exactly what they're saying they're going to do. And I think also this type of scam, the lottery or sweepstakes scams, these, I think most of us have heard of them. We know that, you can get an email that says that you've won the lottery, or this sweepstake. And you might be even thinking to yourself, well, I don't remember entering into any sweepstake. But the key here with these is that, generally speaking, they are going, first of all, they're going to ask you for your information, likely your social security number. They may ask you for a credit card or your bank account information so that they could transfer, they're going to transfer the money into your bank account. But actually they're probably going to do the opposite. So it just, that's how they convince you to hand over that money. And yes, Jill just entered in the chat, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, right? And that's one thing to always think about. And then finally, there's imposter scams, and that's the IRS. That's where people pretend to be your grandchild and other things like that. So with the IRS, it's always people saying you owe us money, or I'm calling from your credit card company or your bank and we need your information. I think the important thing, well, we're going to talk about how to avoid that in just a couple minutes. And then sadly, right now, there are even COVID-19 scams. There's always a scam for something, right? So they're talking with these, it's someone might call you up and say, oh, we're tracing, we're doing contract tracing, and it looks like you were exposed to blah, 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 blah. Or you were exposed to the coronavirus, and, it was, on this date, and were you at this place? And they start asking you a lot of questions and saying, oh, and we need this information about you so that we can, put it in our files. There's also scams. These are purchase scams for home test kits, vaccines, or air purifiers. And the vaccines, meaning, things that aren't really a vaccine, but like maybe a health supplement that if you take this, you won't get COVID, or, different things like that. And then there are also some scams out there that are targeting Social Security benefits. These would be a threat, the threat or fear scam. They'll make you fear that actually they call you up, they say, oh no, if you pay us, we will give you a higher level of security for your Social Security. We'll make sure that you won't be a victim of fraud with Social Security. And so yeah, they're offering to protect you when really they're just taking money from you. And then, of course, there's letters offering fee-based assistance for student loans or foreclosure prevention or things like that. So lots of things to be aware of. But the key is to be able to recognize the scams. So how do you recognize a scam or identity theft, for that matter? Because identity theft is still very prevalent today as well. So before we move on to protecting yourself and recognizing them, are there any questions from anybody right now? Or does anybody have an experience with a scam that I didn't talk about? Feel free to unmute yourself, because it's important to hear what other people have experienced. because there's no way for us to trace every scam that's out there. Okay.
Okay.
Shannon, we had a member that,
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
scam. Oh, can I talk?
sure,
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I get a lot of scams. You know, they text me and leave a message that I have a case coming, and if I don't call him back and resolve the case, the police. But they tell me what kind of case. They just tell me it's case, and I need to call them. Otherwise, the police come and arrest me.
Oh, yeah, and they don't even tell you what the case is for,
No,
or
no, they don't.
yeah.
They don't tell me what the case is for. No.
Yep, that's a very common where they threaten. I've even heard of debt collectors calling people and saying that, you know, they're going to send the police to arrest people or put them in jail, and yeah, it's very scary. So they're threatening you, and it makes you afraid that if you don't hand your money over, they're really going to do that.
Yeah, another thing they will leave on the voicemail that my social security be stopped. I'll not get any more social security if I don't call them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm the champion of scams. My husband said all the scammers calling me.
Well, but if you haven't fallen for it yet, then you are the champion, right? Because you didn't fall for it.
And then
Thank you.
IRS call me and say if I don't call them, they'll arrest me and put me in jail, and I need to call them right away.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's,
thank you for sharing those. Though, I mean, it's important for people to hear that is really happening out there. And Jill, did you have an example?
yeah, we had a member recently, and if you look at Mid-Minnesota's Facebook page, we have kind of the staff person's describing that, but that the woman came in that her computer had been held hostage, and if they didn't send the money, she was going to lose everything. So she actually came into the credit union. She had the people on the phone, and the staff person stopped that. So again, went in, told her to unplug the computer, and went from there. So
Yes.
the IRS is not going to put you in jail.
No.
You know what I mean? And nobody's going to call, and nobody from the your credit union is going to call you and ask you for your social security number and things like that. So know that we won't do that. And if people do call you, hang up the phone. If they say they're from Mid-Minnesota or whatever bank you're with, hang up the phone and call us back.
Always. Yep. That's one of the biggest preventatives out there is I mean, even I get calls from my credit card company all the time. You know, they'll send me an email and a text, and they'll call me and they'll say, this is from the fraud department. Although, you know, I'm like, I don't know if it's really the fraud department calling me. So I always go and look up my credit card company's phone number. And actually, I call from the number on the back of my credit card, because that way I know I'm getting to my credit card company. Yes. So you definitely always want to make sure that you're not just trusting the person who calls you up and says that. Thank you, Jill, for sharing that, because it's, again, important to hear from the institution too, that because I know you guys are out there protecting or trying to, you know, help people avoid scams and frauds. This is a really good question. How come the phone numbers of the scammers can't be traced? So there are apps that you can anybody can download, and it comes up with these fake numbers, so we don't actually know the number that people are calling from. I think you've probably heard of this idea of a spoofed phone number, where it shows up even on your caller ID as somebody that you know, and or you might see a phone number that comes in that isn't from somebody you know, but is very similar to somebody else's phone number. And it's really just a random generator of phone numbers, or it can be a specific spoof. I honestly do not know how they find out who your relatives are and who the close people to you are. But there's a lot of technology out there now that helps them do that. And so, yeah.
And be very careful what you put on social media.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. On my Facebook page, it's really important to make sure that your privacy settings are very strong, but also you don't have to put your phone number up on Facebook. You don't have to put your well, I think you do have to share your real email, but you don't have to share that with other people. You can set it to private, and so it's a lot of these safety measures that, but the problem is that sometimes we unknowingly fill out a form that ends up being sold to somebody who's going to take our information and use it in ways that may lead to scams and fraud. So one big thing that you can do to protect yourself is, okay, this is where we're going to talk about outsmarting the scammers here. First of all, there are different websites that you can go to get off of lists, get off of pre-screen lists, right? So optoutprescreen.com is one place that you can go, and you fill out a form, and it's free, and they take you off of all those pre-approved credit card lists. All right, so that is one thing. So you're limiting the exposure of your information out there. Another thing you can do is go to www.dmachoice.org, and then you are going to get your name taken off of direct marketing lists, so you get less junk mail. And then of course there's finally the donotcall.gov, and these are all free things that you can do. And oh, excuse me, I just got a little dry throat there. These are all free things that you can do. And, the opt-out pre-screen and the donotcall.gov, they do expire after a while. So you have to try to stay aware of when they expire. But if your name, I have had a lot of people say to me, oh, I did the do not call list and I still got calls. The truth of the matter is that if you are on the donotcall.gov list and you get a call from somebody you don't know, then it's not a legitimate company, because legitimate companies are not going to call you if you are on the do not call list. So just keep that in mind, bear that in mind. So this is one way that you can limit your information getting out there, just like through people taking your mail or seeing it through the mail or things like that, okay? Now, what do you do if you get a phone call? Well, I mean, the first thing, and this is easier said than done, but the very, very first thing is, if you have a cell phone or if you have a landline with caller ID and you don't recognize the phone number, don't answer the phone, because anybody who really needs to get a hold of you will leave you a message, right? And if you don't have a voicemail or anything like that set up and you answer the phone and you don't know the person, I know that we were all raised that it's very rude to do this, it's impolite, but you hang up on them. Just hang up on them, because the longer they can keep you on the phone, the more likely they are to be able to talk you into something. And there's a polite way to hang up on people. All you have to do is say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know you and I don't have time to talk right now. And thank you. And just click, right? You don't even have to be that polite, but if it bothers you to just hang up on somebody, go ahead and do that. There's also a way to block robocalls. You can do it on a cell phone or a landline. A lot of cell phones providers already block those calls just automatically, or they give you an option to block the calls for free. But some providers don't offer that, and so there are other other third-party organizations that you can go through that block those robocalls. Sorry. On a landline, Nomo Robo is a free service, and if you go to the website www.nomorobo.com, that's really hard to say, and it will block robocalls, so you will get fewer telemarketer calls. But of course, the other thing to really always remember is don't give out personal information unless you initiated the call and have verified the numbers. So just like Jill and I were just saying, if the bank or credit union or Social Security or IRS or anyone calls you up and says, you know, oh, we need money and we need it right now, or, you know, like in the instance of a bank, somebody calling you up and saying, well, we're calling because we're concerned about your account. Maybe there's fraud. Can you please give us your credit card number? That's a really good time to hang up, even if they sound like they are legitimate from the bank. Say, you know what? I don't have time to deal with this right now, but I will call back. And then hang up. Look at the back of your credit card or bank card and call that company directly and find out. Because honestly, it's better to hurt someone's feelings than it is to have your money taken out of your account, right? And then this is a really important step that most people overlook. In fact, our IT guy here at LSS of Minnesota, he says this is one of the most simple things that people can do to make sure that that they're not having fraudulent charges against them. Check your credit card and bank statements every month. If there is a charge on there that you don't recognize or that you don't understand or that seems to be showing up every single month, it's really important to talk to somebody who can help you. I mean, if you feel like you can't handle it on your own, talk to somebody, go to the bank, ask them about it, or you can call up an LSS financial counselor and ask them to help you with it. Or you can also call a family member, trusted family member or friend, or just call the credit card company directly and say, I don't recognize these charges. I don't know what they're for. And they will work with you to get those charges taken off. Okay, so those are some ways that you can outsmart the scammers on the phone. Now, how do you outsmart scammers on email? First of all, and they have gotten so good. Last year, I got an email from a person at another company, but that I work with, I have a business relationship with. And it came directly from this woman, but it was a really odd request. Like, it didn't make sense. Like, first of all, it was asking me to click on a link. And second of all, it was related to money. Now, I don't have a business relationship with this person where they bill us or we send them money or anything like that. So this email really didn't make any sense. And so I emailed back, and I said, "Is this really so and so?" And they emailed back and said, well, yes, of course it is. Why would you think it wasn't? And then I thought, I don't know, it still doesn't make sense. And so I called her, and yes, her email had been hacked. And it was her exact email and everything. So if you get an email where it's just like, why is this person asking me for money? Or, because email, they have a way to make an email look like it's coming from a friend. So even when you get an email from a friend, if it's an odd request or they're asking you to click on a link or look at a picture, be hesitant. Maybe call your friend and make sure that they sent that. And the second thing that it's really important to do is learn to recognize phishing emails. So let's take a look at a phishing email. This may be a little difficult to see, and I apologize for that. I thought it would come up bigger. But if you look at this, we have an email from the Federal Trade Commission. And here it says secretary at ftccomplaintassistant.com. Well, the FTC website is ftc.gov. So there we know, well, that's not the correct email. And then again, it's signed with that false email. Now, here's another trick that I just want, that I want to share with you all, and that is this. If you hover over a link, if you're not sure about it, that it's going to pop up, a little window is going to pop up, and you will be able to see if that is actually from a legitimate place or not, or if it's a legitimate link. So I apologize. I wanted to share with you just a real example of something like that, because I just recently got an email that was absolutely had this sort of example here. So here we go. Look at this. So we've got, first of all, I won something. I didn't, well, this isn't showing up very good. I apologize. I was hoping this would show up better, but first of all, it says I won something, and then it's talking to me about a free bonus, and then it's telling me to open immediately. All right, so you'll see this, and here my little mouse hovers over everything, but there's no links coming up. They're not telling me where that's going to go. All right, but if you look here, if you can see this at the very bottom left-hand corner of my screen, can you see the little gray area that pops up there? Can people see that? I'll do it again. Right down in the left-hand side here, very left-hand corner. See, now that's not going anywhere. Let me see if I go up here. So I don't want to really click on anything here, but you'll see that this little gray window pops up down here, and that is just to, I don't even know where that's going to take me. So so looking at things like that, you know, you can figure out if it, okay, here's another one, check info. Well, somebody just added $36,614,072. This, first of all, look at the number. It doesn't even make sense, right? Because that should be a comma. So they're wanting me to think that, oh, somebody just added $36,000 to my checking account, but this is the last message. So, and it's my final warning. When you see things like this, you can know that this is a hoax. Oh, look, give us your account number. We need your account number right here. And then we're going to put in this $36,000. So if I hold over here, you know, it just goes to some random web address, and there's all these typos in this email. So those are things that you can look for if you're not sure. All right. Now, when you're on the internet, you also have to be careful. Like Jill was saying earlier, be careful of what you announce on Facebook and other social media websites, Instagram, you know, Twitter, anything like that. If you're on them, don't announce travel plans. Don't you know, give out your address, your phone number, anything like that on those sites. When you, and I know people hate this, but it's really important to use strong and long passwords and different passwords for every site, especially your financial websites. But even your email, oftentimes what our IT department says is to use a phrase instead of a password. Use a passphrase. For example, at one point I had a password that I used, which was based off of my favorite movie at the time. At the time, my favorite movie was Lord of the Rings, and there's a famous phrase from Lord of the Rings, which is "one ring to rule them all," right? And so that was my password. Plus, I put in an exclamation point and the year. All right. So it's something I could remember all the time because it's right there in my, I know this phrase. I like this phrase. And, so I was able to remember it better. But also, if you're just like, I do not want to have a different password because I can't remember it and it drives me crazy, there are different things, different tools that you can use. There's services. One of them is called LastPass, and they're all very safe. They are encrypted with information that will. The information is encrypted, so they're as secure as your bank website, and they're not going to. Hackers really can't hack in to get your passwords. So that can be a really good way to also. That way, you only have to remember one password for everything. But with that one password, it works. Yeah, it just works for all your websites. So it's a really good thing to use. Also, never ever 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 use a debit card to pay online. Credit cards are safer to use online. But really even the best is to use a single source payer like PayPal, Google Pay, iPay. Those services, they don't feel as safe to us because we think they can get hacked, but they are so encrypted that it's really, really difficult, if not, I'll never say anything is impossible, but it's very difficult for those numbers to get hacked. And then finally, you have to watch out also for spoofed websites, all right? Those spoofed websites are, like this example here, Amazon.com. Well, look at that. It looks like an Amazon login, but there's a couple things not quite right here. First of all, we don't have a little lock sign up there, so it's not secure. Second of all, Amazon is spelled with two N's. That's not usually spelled with two N's. And so what the idea here would be is that you're just going to log in like you usually would. Well, guess what? Then the scammers have your password to Amazon. And then they can wreak all sorts of havoc with that account. Okay. So we just have a couple more minutes here. So I just want to make sure that you know about these low-tech interventions also that you can use to deter scammers and identity theft. First of all, the United States Postal Office has an amazing thing called Informed Delivery. If you sign up for this, they will actually send you a scan, like a text or an email of what mail was supposed to be delivered to your house every day. And so that way, you know, if anything is missing, you know, if you will be able to, you'll just know if anything is missing and what was supposed to be delivered. Like I already said, monitor those bank and credit card statements. Monitor those statements every month. I'm a little more intense about it. I probably look at my accounts at least once a week. Make sure to shred all mail with personal information on it. Jill, does MMFCU, do you guys do a shred day for your members?
We do once a year. Yep. So
Yep.
We'll send it out in an email.
Yeah.
And we recommend everybody, if you can, have a home shredder.
Mm-hmm.
They're small, they're not very expensive.
Nope.
And anything that you don't want anybody to see, just shred it up.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I think home shredders are great. But even saving everything up for the shred day once a year can be really good too. Make sure you look at your credit report annually and review those Social Security statements annually. You want to make sure your earnings are accurate on there and that all the other information is correct, your address, name, things like that. If you suspect that you are a victim of identity theft, make sure you call all companies affected. You can report it at identitytheft.gov. or call ID Theft Resource Center. And, you know, I will send a copy of this out to everybody who was registered for the workshop today. So don't worry about having to write this down or commit it to memory. I will send it out to you. Also, if you're a victim of identity theft, you have to file a police report either by phone or online, and to really make the affidavit official. But then the next thing you're going to want to do is look at your credit reports and place a temporary fraud alert. You also may want to consider freezing your credit report. And these are the websites for each of the three credit bureaus that you can go to freeze your credit report. And basically what that means is a credit freeze lacks access to your credit file. You can still use your open lines of credit, but you're not going to be able to apply for anything new unless you lift that credit freeze. It is free to place the freeze. It is free to lift it. And it lifts pretty quickly. But one thing, just a couple tips, you want to make sure that you set aside a good chunk of time to get that set up. You want to store usernames and passwords in a secure spot, and make a reminder to look for the PIN in the email. And if you can't do it online, try doing it by phone, because sometimes people have problems with the website. So you can also do it by phone. But it's a great deterrent to identity theft because it completely locks down your credit report and nobody can look at it, even if you authorize it without you pulling it up. I mean, sorry, without you unfreezing it. Now, one last thing here, there is a new service out here called a credit lock. This is the same as a credit freeze, only the credit bureaus are charging people to do it. The only benefit we can find between a credit lock or that makes a credit lock better than a freeze is the fact that you just have to download an app and you lock and unlock with a click of a button. But they're charging anywhere from $10 to $30 a month for that service. So, you know, if you want to sign up for that for peace of mind, you can go ahead and do that. But why pay for something when you can do it for free? That's just kind of the philosophy that we have. But everybody has their own price for peace of mind, right? I just want to see, that's all I had for you today. I know it's a lot of information to take in, which is why I will be sending out the PDF for you all. But are there any questions right now?
Yes, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
My wife often gets calls from a company that says, we will lower the interest rate on all your credit cards. Can a third-party company lower your interest rate for you?
So the answer to that question is yes and no. But because they are contacting you, they might be a debt relief company. And so you do have to be cautious of that. And the reason why I say yes and no is that at LSS Financial Counseling, we do have a program called the Debt Management Plan. And so we would be considered a third party organization, and we legitimately work with credit card companies to reduce your interest rates and help people get out of credit card debt. But any company, I would say that just calls you up out of the blue and says that they're going to work on doing that, I would be very cautious of, because they are getting your name from just probably a generic pull of your credit report. And they probably have a list of who you owe money to. So any company that you're going to work with financially, you want to check out, are they licensed with the Department of Commerce, the Minnesota Department of Commerce? And you can also check the Attorney General's office or the Department of Commerce to see if there have been any complaints about that company. And yeah.
The chat side?
Yes. Yeah. Well, when I Google that scenario, I get something like, this company will charge you typically $2,000. They'll tell you to stop paying all your credit card bills, and then they'll negotiate with the credit card companies. And if you do that, your credit score goes down the tubes.
Exactly. And so they're not, yeah, and they're not, they're pitching to you that they're going to get your interest rates reduced, but they don't do anything with your interest rates. That's a debt settlement company, and what they do is yeah, like you said, they charge you $2,000, tell you to stop paying your credit cards. They keep all that money, and then you keep sending them money, and they supposedly will settle your accounts for less than what you owe, but not until you have enough money in your escrow account is what they call it. And so yeah, a lot of times what we see with those companies is, first of all, their track record is terrible. They tend to settle 1 out of every 17 accounts, so it's not a very good track record.
Yeah. Well, isn't it simpler for my wife to call the credit card company directly and ask them to do that at no charge?
Yes, absolutely. Your wife can always try to do that. Credit card companies are a little, it's weird with the interest rates, because now I'm sure at the credit union here, credit unions tend to always have a much lower interest rate than typical credit cards, than your bigger credit card companies like Chase or Chase or Visa, or I mean, like, yeah, Chase or CitiCard or Capital One. But the typical interest rate for a credit card is in the teens, 13 to 15%. So if that's what you're already paying, it's unlikely they will lower your interest rate, because that's just where their interest rates are. As compared to, like, on our debt management plan, a lot of creditors will go below 10%. So, but I do always encourage people to call and ask, because the worst they can do is say no. All right, I realize we're past the hour. Do we have time to see if there's 1 or 2 more questions?
Sure. If there's any other questions, you can either ask it or put it in the chat box there. Know that this presentation is being recorded, and so we will put it on the Mid-Minnesota website for you. So if you know somebody that would benefit from this, in a couple days here, just send them over there and have them watch it.
Yeah.
I don't see anything in the chat, Shannon.
Great. Okay. Well, wonderful. Like I said, I will send out the PDF of the presentation today, so that you have all those resources listed there. And I just really want to take a moment to thank everybody for being on the call today.
And thank you, Shannon, very much.
Thank you, Jill, for hosting or organizing it. All right.
Thanks,
Take care.
Everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Yeah. Bye-bye.